The mop cracked in half with a sound like a bone splitting. One end clattered across the hallway tiles. The other was still gripped in Marcus Lane's hand, steady, low, and angled across his body like a staff. 4 boys stood frozen. One was bleeding from the mouth. Another clutched his wrist. All of them stared wide-eyed at the janitor who just floored them in seconds because they'd shoved his son against a locker. "You lay hands on him again," Marcus said, voice even, "and I won't stop at splinters." From the far end of the hallway, someone gasped. Across the linoleum, a teacher shouted, "Security!" They didn't understand what they'd just seen. Not yet. But they would. The man in the faded custodial uniform wasn't some overprotective dad who lost his cool. He'd calculated every move down to the breath. He didn't just break the mop, he disarmed it. And the moment those boys fell, the school district's lie began to unravel. Subscribe if you feel it coming. Because the courtroom won't survive what this janitor's hiding. He wasn't wearing body armor. He wasn't holding a badge. He wasn't raising his voice. But Marcus stood like someone who'd once been saluted, not dismissed. People always assumed things about him. That he was quiet because he was slow. That his uniform meant he wasn't educated. That he mopped floors because he couldn't do anything else. That his son, Noah, was weak just because he stuttered. They never asked how he moved so fast, why he never flinched when someone raised a fist, why he scanned a room like he was mapping exits, why he always made sure Noah walked 2 steps ahead, never behind, and no one ever noticed his boots, not until the judge did. Where are you watching from? Let me tell you something up front. Celeste Braxton picked the wrong janitor to threaten, and by the time she realized it, the court was already silent. "Let me go! Let me go!" Noah's voice cracked through the echo of footsteps. Marcus didn't speak. He just kept walking, one hand on his son's shoulder, the other still holding the mop handle like it meant something more. The security guard beside them said nothing, only pointed toward the principal's office. Behind them, the hallway was chaos. Teachers shouting, phones out, students whispering like it was a movie scene gone off script. Marcus could still feel the contact points, the elbow strike, the redirect, the fall. None of it was rage. It was reflex. Inside the office, Principal Reeves looked ready to explode. "You assaulted 4 minors," she said, slamming a folder shut. "Do you understand how serious this is?" Marcus sat down, calmly. Noah's shoulders were still shaking beside him. Reeves leaned in. "We'll be contacting the police and the school board?" "Good," Marcus said, folding his hands. "I'd like to see the footage myself." She blinked. Across town, Celeste Braxton was already on a call. Her son had a busted lip and bruised ego, and no amount of money could scrub that from Instagram. She didn't care about justice. She cared about optics. And Marcus Lane was about to be labeled a violent liability, unless someone stopped her. But Marcus didn't make calls. He didn't fight with words. He waited. Because some wars, you don't win by striking first. Later that evening, in their 2-room apartment above the laundromat, Noah sat cross-legged on the floor, trying to speak. I didn't mean for it to happen. Marcus set the dinner tray down. 2 grilled cheese halves, 1 chipped plate. "You didn't make anyone hurt you," he said. "You just didn't deserve it." Noah looked up. "But now they'll try to get you fired." Marcus finally smiled. It was faint, tired. Let them try, because they still didn't know who he was, what he'd done, what uniform he used to wear. Tomorrow, they'd start the fire. But Marcus had already lived through war. Marcus didn't speak much the next morning. He packed Noah's lunch like always. Peanut butter sandwich, apple slices, a folded paper towel with a note that just said, "Remember, center your breath." Noah didn't ask what it meant, but he clutched it tight as they walked through the school gates. They were early, too early. Most of the students hadn't arrived yet, but the front office lights were already on, and Marcus could see the silhouettes through the glass. People were waiting. They didn't make it 3 steps past the front desk before the assistant principal, Ms. Kilmer, intercepted them. "Mr. Lane," she said, eyes darting behind him toward Noah. "You'll need to come with me." Marcus glanced at his son. "Get to class," he said quietly. "But go?" Noah hesitated, but the tone in his father's voice, calm, level, decisive, left no room for argument. He slipped his backpack on tighter and walked away, shoulders hunched. Marcus followed Ms. Kilmer down the narrow hallway. The air smelled like stale coffee and printer ink. She didn't say a word. When she opened the door, the principal was already seated. Celeste Braxton was standing behind him, arms folded, jaw tight. 2 other parents were seated, murmuring to each other, one of them still scrolling on his phone with a pinched expression. "This isn't a disciplinary hearing yet," Reeves said, gesturing for Marcus to sit, "but we're obligated to address yesterday's incident." Celeste stepped forward before Marcus could speak. "Your son has a history of behavioral issues, doesn't he?" Marcus blinked. "He stutters." "Don't play games," she snapped. "We have multiple witnesses who say he provoked them." "I saw the video," one of the fathers added. "Your kid threw a pencil at mine." Marcus looked at the principal. "Can I see it?" Reeves hesitated. "It's being reviewed. We'll release." "The footage once—" "He wants to see it?" Celeste laughed. "What, so he can memorize the angles like some thug lawyer?" Her words echoed. Marcus didn't move. Reeves cleared his throat. "There's been a request to place both you and your son on temporary suspension, pending review." "You're suspending me?" Marcus asked, his voice flat. "As a contractor on school grounds," Celeste answered for him, "you fall under discretionary supervision. We can remove you for any conduct deemed disruptive." Marcus took a slow breath. "You're punishing him because I defended him." "No," Reeves said quickly. "We're not punishing anyone. This is about maintaining order." Celeste leaned forward. "And what exactly qualifies you to use that kind of force on minors?" Marcus met her eyes. "I stopped them." "You attacked children." He turned to Reeves. "Did any of them require hospitalization?" "No, but that doesn't excuse—" "Then I didn't use force. I used control." The room went still. Celeste exhaled through her nose like she'd smelled something sour. "You think you're clever." "I think," Marcus said, "you're afraid of what that footage shows." Reeves stood up, hands braced on the desk. "Mr. Lane, I understand you're upset, but unless you want this escalated to legal channels, I suggest you accept the suspension and leave quietly." There it was, the line drawn. Marcus stood. "You'll be hearing from me." As he walked out, Celeste muttered something under her breath. He didn't turn around. He found Noah sitting on the curb behind the gym. The boy's backpack was open, books scattered around his feet. He was hugging his knees. "They sent me out," Noah said, before his father could ask. Said I couldn't be on school property if you were suspended." Marcus sat beside him, slowly, knees creaking from years of hard labor and harder days. He didn't speak for a long time. The sun was still climbing, and the morning hadn't burned off its chill yet. Across the lot, sprinklers ticked away in perfect rhythm. Noah wiped his nose on his sleeve. "It's gonna be bad, isn't it?" "Yes," Marcus said. Noah didn't flinch. He just nodded. "They're saying I started it," he whispered. "That I threw something." Marcus looked at him. "Did you?" Noah's eyes welled up. No." "Then that's the last time you explain yourself." They sat there in silence, father and son, 2 shadows tucked away from a world that judged before it asked. Finally, Marcus stood. Let's go." "Where?" "Home." He waited for Noah to gather his things. The boy zipped his bag, slow and precise, every movement small and careful. The way someone moves when they know they're being watched. As they walked away from the school, past the shining SUVs, the iron fence, the flags whipping in the wind, Marcus kept his hand on Noah's back. He didn't look back. He never did. Not unless the enemy was behind him. The boardroom was colder than the morning air outside. Marcus sat in the lone plastic chair set at the far end of the long mahogany table, the same one where substitute teachers waited to be evaluated, and cafeteria vendors pitched menu contracts. But he wasn't here to pitch anything. He wasn't even allowed to speak yet. At the other end of the table sat 5 board members. Celeste Braxton was centered between them, wearing a pearl gray pantsuit and a smile that was more weapon than expression. She didn't look at him. She looked past him, as if he were part of the janitorial cart someone had forgotten to wheel out. "We'd like to thank everyone for joining on such short notice," she began, hands folded gracefully on the table. "This is, of course, an unfortunate situation." Noah was sitting just outside in the hallway, watched over by a substitute assistant. He wasn't allowed inside, not until deliberations were over. He had tried not to cry when they separated him from his father again. Marcus had just nodded once, the way he always did, and whispered, "Breathe like I taught you." The first board member to speak was a pale, thin man with rimless glasses. We've reviewed the hallway footage, and while the angle is partially obstructed, it's clear that Mr. Lane engaged physically with 4 students. "He didn't engage," said another board member, a woman with soft features and a hesitant tone. "He reacted. I watched the clip. The boys cornered his son." Celeste didn't let the hesitation linger. "And did you also notice," she interjected sweetly, "that the moment Mr. Lane stepped in, he used precise force to disable 4 students in under 5 seconds? Not shove, not restrain, disable, as if it were practiced." There was a beat of silence. Even the air seemed still. "I'd like to enter into record that this is not the first time the Lane boy has had conflict with others," she continued. "Last semester there was an incident involving a broken art project. The teacher ruled that was an accident," the soft-voiced board member replied. Celeste's eyes hardened. "Perception matters, and perception is that this family is disruptive." That was the word. Not dangerous, not aggressive, just enough shame coded into a neutral package to make it sound objective. Marcus leaned forward slightly, hands still folded in his lap. "I'm sorry. Am I allowed to respond?" Celeste looked at the chair of the board, who shrugged stiffly. "You may speak." Marcus nodded. "You're talking about perception." "Yes," she said, sitting back. "Perception is what guides school culture." "Then let's talk about mine." Celeste narrowed her eyes. He continued, voice steady. "You're right, I didn't shove them. I didn't swing wild. I didn't yell. Because I wasn't afraid of 4 boys." He looked directly at her now. "I was afraid my son would think no one would ever stand for him." The woman with the soft voice lowered her eyes. Marcus let the silence stretch a moment longer. "Your culture," he added, "isn't about safety. It's about optics. You didn't suspend my son to protect other students. You did it to protect your image." Celeste clapped her hands once quietly. "Thank you, Mr. Lane. That will be enough." The board chair cleared his throat. "We'll enter into closed discussion. You're dismissed." He stood. So did Marcus. But he didn't walk out right away. He placed his hand on the back of the chair and said, "You know what the camera didn't catch?" Everyone looked at him. He met their gaze, one by one. "My son didn't fight back, not once. He curled up, covered his head. and waited for it to be over. Because the last time he tried to defend himself, he was told he'd get detention for escalating it. His fingers tapped the chair once, and yet he's the one banned from school. He walked out without another word. In the hallway, Noah stood up fast. "You okay?" Marcus nodded. "We're done here." Noah looked at the door. Did they believe you?" Marcus didn't answer. They stepped out of the building together, passing by parents arriving for afternoon pickups. Some recognized Marcus. A few whispered. One woman, someone he vaguely remembered from cafeteria duty rotation, actually turned her child in the opposite direction when they crossed paths. Back in the parking lot, a group of students stood clustered near the flagpole. Among them was Caleb Braxton, Celeste's son. His lip was swollen. His eyes tracked Marcus and Noah without expression. "You gonna lose your job?" Noah asked softly, almost a whisper. "I don't know," Marcus said. The truth was, he already knew the answer. Celeste wasn't the kind of person who started things without making sure she could end them, but that didn't matter, because the truth was already bleeding through. One board member had hesitated. That was enough. He didn't need everyone to see, just one to ask, why does a janitor move like that? He unlocked the car and held the door for Noah. The war hadn't started yet, but the enemy had taken the first step. By Monday morning, Marcus's suspension was official. An email from the district arrived at 6:12 a.m., curt and precise. Subject: immediate removal from duties pending review. It listed policy numbers, cited language like potential liability, and instructed him not to return to school property until further notice. It didn't mention the meeting. It didn't mention the footage. It didn't mention Noah. He read it once, then closed his laptop. Noah was still asleep on the couch, curled in a blanket too small, his school bag beside him like a guard dog. Marcus hadn't told him yet. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the fridge and the faint tick of the wall clock. They hadn't eaten dinner the night before. Neither of them was hungry. He got up slowly, walked to the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. His knuckles were bruised, just faint discoloration where the mop had snapped. He hadn't noticed until now. He flexed his hand once, winced, then reached for the first aid kit beneath the sink. Noah stirred. Marcus didn't speak. He sat on the edge of the couch and unwrapped the bandage silently. "Did they fire you?" Noah's voice was small. "No." "Not yet?" "Not yet." Noah pulled the blanket tighter around himself. His hair was a mess. He hadn't wanted to shower the night before. "Are we going to be okay?" Marcus paused. "Yes?" He lied smoothly, calmly, like he'd done in other countries, in other crises, when panicked civilians looked to him for answers he wasn't allowed to give. The calm voice was part of the job. The calm voice kept people alive. Later that morning, Ms. Delaney called. She was Noah's art teacher, young, sharp-eyed, always smelling faintly of lavender oil and charcoal pencil shavings. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Mr. Lane, I'm not supposed to be calling," she said, "but I had to tell you what happened in the faculty room." Marcus adjusted the phone against his shoulder. "Go on." Celeste Braxton filed a formal request for Noah's transfer. That landed harder than the suspension. "Transfer where?" "To an alternate campus, the one near the highway. It's for temporary behavioral reassignment, usually for kids with violence records. She's trying to push it through without a hearing. Says it's to protect her son." Marcus's voice dropped. "Did they approve it?" "No, not yet. But they're not pushing back either. She has influence." He already knew that. He just hadn't expected her to move so fast. "She's building a paper trail," he said. "Yes." A pause. "She's scared of you," Delaney added softly. "No, she's scared of what I used to be." The teacher didn't ask what that meant, but her silence told him she understood more than she let on. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know you can't come back to campus, but if you want copies of the policy language, I can get them." "No," he said. "I need something else." "What?" "Does the school still use analog backup for security footage?" Another pause. "Only for the central hallway cameras. Everything else is cloud-based." "Good. Why?" "Because cloud access can be revoked," he said, "but analog can be retrieved." He could hear the gears turning on her end. "You think they'll erase the original footage?" "I think they already have." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "I'll find out what I can." By noon, Noah had gone silent again. He was at the kitchen table drawing. He'd started sketching faces lately. No bodies, just eyes, mouths, shadows where the cheeks should be. The page in front of him now had 4 blurred shapes in the background, and one small figure curled up in the foreground. "That's not what happened," Marcus said gently, looking over his shoulder. "It feels like it did." Marcus sat down beside him. "They don't get to rewrite it." "They are." Marcus didn't argue. He just stared at the paper, then reached for his wallet. He pulled out a worn, laminated card. The edges were frayed, the ink fading. It had no rank, no insignia, just numbers and letters, coordinates, classification levels. "What's that?" Noah asked. "It's why they're scared." Noah looked confused. "You'll understand later," Marcus said, sliding it back into his wallet. "For now, just remember this. You didn't do anything wrong, and I'm not done." That night, Marcus went to the hardware store. He paid in cash, asked no questions, bought 2 rolls of thermal insulation tape, a pocket recorder, and a wrench set. The clerk didn't look up. Nobody looked at a man in a janitor uniform buying tools. He walked home the long way, past the school. Lights were still on in the main building. Cleaners were inside. Custodial crew rotated through in the evenings. He knew their schedules, knew the locks, knew the blind spots in the security system. He wasn't going to break in. He wasn't that stupid. But he needed to see the camera angle again. Needed to know if the hallway recorder, the one still backed by analog, had been replaced. And from the way the dome light flickered behind the tinted glass, he was almost certain it hadn't. He stood there a while longer, hands in his pockets, listening to the buzz of the transformer box humming behind the chain-link fence. He didn't smile, didn't smirk. But deep in his chest, something old and mechanical began to click back into place. By Tuesday afternoon, Marcus had what he needed. It started with a knock at the back door of the maintenance building. Not the school's front office, not even the teacher's lounge, but the supply access, where chemical orders came in and mop heads were discarded by the bundle. He'd used that door for 6 years, never needed to knock. But this time, he waited. The door creaked open an inch, then wider, then stopped. Leo stood there, mid-50s, wiry, wearing a grease-streaked jumpsuit, and an expression that belonged to a man who didn't want to ask questions, but knew he should. "You're not supposed to be here." Marcus nodded once. "I'm not asking for favors." Leo scratched the back of his neck. "You shouldn't be on the grounds." "I didn't go past the fence." "That's a technicality." Marcus stepped forward just enough that the overhead light caught his face. Leo frowned. "You all right?" "Are the analog tapes still backed up weekly?" "Yeah. They get swapped every Sunday night." The fight happened. Friday. Leo didn't answer right away. "You still have the cartridge?" Marcus asked. Leo sighed through his nose. "They told us to clear that footage." "But you didn't?" A long silence. Then Leo stepped aside. Inside, the maintenance office hadn't changed. Whiteboards with shift rotations, broken equipment tags, old paper orders yellowed around the corners. Marcus stood still for a moment, letting the weight of it settle. Then Leo pulled out a locked drawer beneath the desk. "I shouldn't be doing this," he muttered. "You didn't get this from me." "I won't put your name in anything." Leo slid a small black cartridge across the desk. "I made a dupe," he said. "Out of habit. Didn't trust the cloud sync." Marcus picked it up gently, like something fragile. "It's only the hallway feed," Leo added. "No audio, but it's clean." Marcus nodded. "Thank you. I didn't do it for you." "I know." "I did it for the kid. He always waved at me." Marcus looked up. "He waves at everybody. That's why." Back home, Marcus didn't watch the footage immediately. He waited until Noah had gone to bed, curled again on the couch, even though his room was clean and the sheets were fresh. He said he didn't want to be alone. Marcus didn't push. He plugged the cartridge into the old TV unit in the corner. It was dusty, hadn't been used in months. But it worked. He cued the feed to 12:06 p.m., lunch hour. The hallway appeared in grainy grayscale. Noah, standing at his locker. The four boys approaching. Caleb Braxton first, the others hanging back, grinning. One of them mimed something behind Noah's head, bunny ears or devil horns. Then Caleb shoved him, hard. Noah stumbled. Another push. Marcus entered the frame from the far end, walking quickly. He paused the feed. He remembered the moment, the pressure in his lungs, the angle of the shove, the silence before the break. Then he hit play again. In 4 seconds, it was over. Caleb down. The second kid on his knees. The third slumped against the wall, winded. The fourth, reaching to run and tripping backward. And Marcus, he didn't throw a punch. He redirected, disarmed, neutralized. No injuries, no rage, just precision. He paused it again, then rewound, played it once more, then again. After the third run, he opened his notebook and began to write. Wednesday morning, he visited an old friend. Stark Legal Services was wedged between a pawn shop and a dry cleaner, with peeling paint and a locked glass case holding years of dusty business cards. The receptionist blinked when she saw him. "I'm here for Maya. She's in with a client. She'll take this one." The receptionist hesitated. "Tell her Marcus Lane's here." 5 minutes later, Maya Stark walked out, still adjusting the cuffs of her blazer. Her hair was shorter than he remembered. Her tone wasn't. "Well, damn," she said. "When ghosts show up, they usually bring bad news." This one brought evidence. Even worse. They went into her office. He handed her the notebook first. She scanned it, then looked at the cartridge. "You want to sue?" "No." "You want to keep your job?" "Not really." "Then what?" "I want to make sure Noah stays. I want them to stop burying him under their power games. I want the record corrected." She leaned back. "You're asking for a lot of favors." "I'm not asking for favors." She studied his face, then sighed. "What's your end game, Marcus?" "To remind them I was trained to remove threats, and that I know what real threats look like." She didn't smile, but she didn't say no either. That night, he made a copy of the footage, one for the lawyer, one for backup. He stored the second copy in a locked firebox under Noah's bed, the same place he kept their birth certificates, the lease, and the letters from his late wife, folded and yellowed and unread for years. The house was quiet again, but this time he didn't feel alone. He felt ready. Celeste had started something, a campaign, a purge. She'd underestimated what a janitor could do. She wouldn't make that mistake again. Celeste Braxton was not used to waiting. She sat at the head of the boardroom table, 2 phones in front of her, both buzzing intermittently. Her assistant had already canceled 3 meetings that morning and rescheduled a lunch with the city superintendent. None of it mattered now. The only thing that mattered was containing the leak. Because there had been one, small, subtle, but real. An email sent to the full board from an anonymous source. No text, just an attached video clip and a single line, "Before you decide." It was the hallway footage, not the cloud-edited version Celeste's tech liaison had trimmed down for optics. The full version, raw, silent, time-stamped, and uncut, the part they'd tried to erase. It had already been viewed 19 times by the time she opened it. The air in the boardroom was cool, recycled, humming with ceiling vents. She stared at the paused frame on her laptop, the moment Marcus stepped into the frame. He looked ordinary, unimpressive, forgettable, until he moved. Elsewhere in the back room of a quiet diner, Maya Stark placed her phone down gently after ending the call. Marcus sat across from her, elbows on the table, hands clasped loosely. He hadn't touched the coffee. He wasn't there for comfort. "She's seen it," Maya said. He nodded once. "And?" "She'll pretend she hasn't," Maya added. "But the others won't. Word's already spreading among district staff. That footage is cleaner than anything they've got, and it shows exactly what happened." Marcus didn't smile. "Then it's working." "Marcus, this is still a fight," she said. "You think logic is enough, but this isn't the field. It's reputation warfare. Celeste built her name on being untouchable. You want to take that apart? You need pressure. From above. I know. I've started drafting the statement. If they move against Noah again, we go public." He nodded again. "They will." Maya looked at him for a long moment. "You sure you're ready for that?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. That afternoon, Ms. Delaney found a printout in her mailbox. No sender listed. Just a photocopy of a district transfer request, with Noah Lane's name on the first line and a recommendation for permanent reassignment to a behavioral alternative program. She took it straight to the union rep. He hadn't seen it yet. He was furious. So was the PTA chair, who happened to be in the building when she stormed into the office. So was the counselor, who had never filed a disciplinary referral for Noah. And within an hour, the teachers' group chat had screenshots, details, and timeline questions flying. By the end of the school day, the quiet sympathy around Marcus and Noah had begun to shift into something louder, uncomfortable, risky, but necessary. At home, Marcus packed a small duffel bag. Not because he was leaving, because he knew what came next. He tucked in the basics, phone charger, ID, a few documents, his old credentials, sealed in a manila envelope, a military commendation plaque, cracked at the corner. The kind that said, "You mattered once," but only in rooms where that language meant something. Noah sat nearby watching. "You going somewhere?" "No," Marcus said. "But if they come for you again, we go together. Not apart." Noah looked down. "They hate us. They don't even know us. They don't want to." Marcus knelt in front of him, voice steady. "Then we stop asking, and we start showing." Noah nodded slowly. "How?" Marcus zipped the bag shut. "Let me handle that part." At 6:42 p.m., Celeste received an alert from her private comms team. A new post was circulating on local parent forums. Nothing dramatic, just a thread labeled, "What really happened in the hallway?" with a still image attached. The photo showed Caleb Braxton reaching for Noah's collar. In the background, Marcus's silhouette was already mid-step. The lighting was poor. The image slightly grainy. But it was enough. The comments were already multiplying. Celeste's name appeared by the third reply. By the 10th, someone had linked the anonymous video file. She slammed her laptop shut and grabbed her phone. "Get legal," she barked into the receiver. "Now." Marcus watched the threads emerge in silence. He didn't comment, didn't reply, didn't like or share. He didn't need to. Reputation, was like water pressure. Once the leak started, the structure did the rest. Later that night, Noah walked into the living room holding his old sketchbook, the one Marcus had given him 3 years ago, after his first full week back at school. "I made something," Noah said. Marcus set down the remote. "Can I see?" Noah hesitated, then opened the page. The drawing was sharper than anything he'd done before. 5 figures stood in the hallway. 4 blurred into motion. 1 stood straight, calm, centered, with a broken mop in one hand and a shadowed face that didn't look angry, just focused. Marcus blinked. "You remembered?" Noah nodded. "I wanted it to be right." Marcus reached out, ran his fingers along the page edge, and said nothing. Because some truths didn't need to be spoken. They just needed to be seen. The summons came in a plain white envelope, hand-delivered by courier at 10:17 a.m. Marcus didn't open it right away. He set it on the counter beside the coffee pot, finished rinsing the dishes, then dried his hands on a towel that still carried a faint lemon scent. Only when Noah returned to the table with his half-eaten cereal did Marcus finally pick it up. His name was typed neatly across the front. No return address, no seal. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Notification of emergency board hearing. Requested by Celeste Braxton. Scheduled for Friday morning. Purpose, final disciplinary review, and formal recommendation of permanent expulsion for Noah Lane. Marcus read it twice. Noah was staring at him, spoon frozen midair. "They're going through with it?" he asked. Marcus folded the letter. "Yes." Noah swallowed hard. "But we sent the video. They saw it. They said..." "They're pushing past it," Marcus said calmly, trying to beat the reaction, get ahead of it before it spreads. He walked to the closet, pulled out the small black case from the top shelf, and laid it on the kitchen table. He clicked it open. Inside was a pressed set of documents, ID cards, one that hadn't been used in over a decade. And next to them, resting against the lining, a simple gold pin, a falcon with wings spread, talons curled. Noah leaned forward, eyes wide. "What's that?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He picked it up, turning it once between his fingers. Then he set it down beside the summons. "It's what they gave us after surviving something the world never admitted happened," he said. "A team of 9 went in. 3 came back. They gave us a pin, a thank you, and a wall no one visits." Noah's eyes stayed locked on the emblem. "I thought you were a janitor." "I am," Marcus said. "But before that, I made things disappear." That afternoon, Marcus returned to Stark Legal. Maya had already anticipated him. "The hearing's a trap," she said, sliding a thick manila folder across the desk. "They're hoping you'll lose your temper in public, that you'll give them something else to twist." "I won't." "I know, but they're stacking witnesses. 3 teachers on their side, 2 parents, and no sign of the footage in the hearing packet. They're pretending it doesn't exist." "They don't have to mention it," Marcus said. "We will." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" "They've made it personal. It's time I do the same." She leaned back, studying him. "There's a way to hit back without losing control. But once you show your hand, there's no going back." Marcus opened the duffel bag he'd carried in. From it, he removed a slim folder with a black stripe across the top. "I'm not showing my hand," he said. "I'm showing my record." Maya took the folder and flipped it open. As she scanned the contents, her eyes narrowed. "You were cleared for classified escort under Falcon Directive?" He nodded. "No one outside Central Command ever sees this." "I don't need them to see the whole file," Marcus said. "Just one thing." Thursday evening, Marcus took Noah out to the edge of town, past the bus depot, past the shuttered warehouses, past the last stoplight where cell service started to drop. There, by the old riverbed, was a bench made of rough concrete and bolted steel. It had no plaque, no flowers. Just a few names scratched into the base by hand. Noah looked around, confused. Is this a park? No. Then what is it? Marcus sat. His shoulders sank with the weight of memory. It's a place no one visits, but it matters. Noah slowly sat beside him. There was a mission once, Marcus said quietly. We were told it would be quick, a clean extraction. But when we got there, it was wrong. Everything was wrong. He paused, eyes fixed on the distant waterline. They lied about the threats. They lied about the evac. And when things went bad, they tried to erase us. Noah didn't speak. We had to improvise, Marcus said. We pulled out 4 civilians, 2 injured, 1 barely breathing. We made it to the rendezvous 22 hours late. They were going to leave us behind. Did you make it? We did, barely. Marcus leaned back, exhaling slowly. They gave us medals, pushed it off the books, buried the names. We didn't talk about it again, not even to family. He looked at his son now, steady and quiet. But if they try to erase you, Noah, I won't let that happen. Noah stared at the bench, at the names. He didn't ask more. He didn't need to. He just nodded. That night, Marcus ironed his only clean shirt. He polished his boots with an old rag, buffed them until the toe caught the light. Then he placed the gold pin inside his jacket pocket. The same pocket where he'd once kept the coordinates of a compound halfway across the world. The same one where he'd held a photo of Noah the day he was born. He stood in front of the mirror, checked the seams, adjusted the collar. When he looked at himself, he didn't see a janitor. He saw a man the district should never have underestimated. And tomorrow, he'd remind them exactly why. The school board chamber was packed by 9:15 a.m. Teachers sat shoulder to shoulder in the back row. Parents lined the side wall, murmuring, in low voices. The media hadn't been invited, but word had spread through the district's back channels, and a local podcast host with a phone rig was already live streaming from just outside the door. Marcus arrived 5 minutes before start time. Noah was at his side, hair neatly combed, shirt tucked in. His hands trembled slightly as they clutched his backpack straps, but he didn't stutter when he said, "I'm ready." Marcus didn't speak. He simply placed a hand on Noah's shoulder, guiding him forward through the crowd. Whispers followed them. Some were familiar voices, some were not. Celeste Braxton stood waiting near the front row. Her posture was relaxed, but her eyes tracked Marcus with sharpened calculation. She wore a charcoal gray jacket over a cream blouse. A deliberate softness meant to contrast the aggression she expected from him. She didn't greet him. Neither did Principal Reeves. The board chair banged the gavel once. "We'll come to order." Everyone sat. The temperature in the room felt colder than it should have. The AC hummed overhead, but it wasn't the machine that made people shift in their seats. It was the silence. "This hearing," the chair began, "is to determine the recommendation for permanent transfer of Noah Lane from Central Unified to North Ridge Behavioral Center, based on conduct violations and concerns for peer safety." Maya Stark stood up. "Objection. The conduct violation is unsubstantiated and contradicted by visual evidence." Celeste rose, unruffled. "There is no verified footage entered into record. We have eyewitness statements and disciplinary notes." Marcus reached into his bag and pulled out the black cartridge. The room stilled. "This," he said, holding it up, "is the original analog feed from the main hallway security camera. It shows the entirety of the incident in question." "Unverified," Celeste snapped. "I brought 2 backups," Marcus said calmly. "One for the board, one for public record, and one that's already been forwarded to the superintendent's office." Celeste's jaw twitched. "I suggest," Maya added, "we watch it before continuing." The chair looked between them, then nodded. Play the footage. The screen mounted on the wall flickered to life. Black and white. No audio. The room watched as the four boys approached Noah's locker. No one spoke. Then came the first shove, the second. Noah stumbling back, arms up, not striking, not engaging, just enduring. Then Marcus appeared on screen. He didn't run. He didn't yell. He moved with intent. One step, then two, then a precise redirection. An elbow pulled off target. A foot swept from beneath. One motion, then another. 4 seconds. 4 down. No harm inflicted beyond balance and breath. No overreach. Just control. When the footage ended, the room was silent. Even Celeste didn't speak immediately. The board chair cleared his throat. Is this the full original? Yes, Marcus said. Dated and time-stamped. Synced with the building's analog backup system, which your IT staff was instructed to erase. The soft-voiced board member, Mrs. Haddix, spoke up for the first time. Why would anyone instruct that? Marcus didn't answer. Maya did. Because if this footage had been entered into record last week, there would be no grounds for transfer, no charges of aggression, and no justification for punishing a child who was clearly the victim. Celeste finally spoke. Voice clipped. We can't verify the chain of custody. You don't need to, Maya said. You only need to compare the footage to your own records, which we already subpoenaed. Celeste paled. Principal Reeves opened a folder slowly, face tight. I wasn't told a subpoena had been issued. Maya's tone didn't change. It was received 2 days ago and ignored. Marcus stepped forward slowly. I didn't come here to get my job back. I didn't come here to fight for myself. He turned to face the room, the teachers, the staff, the board. I came here because someone tried to erase what my son survived. Not because they believed he was dangerous, but because he embarrassed the wrong kid, the wrong mother, the wrong story. His voice stayed quiet. He didn't raise it. But I've spent most of my life cleaning up messes created by people who lie with power. I know what it looks like when someone like Celeste Braxton tries to bury the truth. He reached into his jacket. From the inner pocket, he withdrew the gold falcon pin. He set it gently on the table. I've earned the right to be believed, he said, and so has my son. Celeste opened her mouth to respond, but the chair raised his hand. That's enough, he said. His voice was firm now. Something had shifted. This board will take a recess for deliberation. He banged the gavel once. The room didn't erupt. It exhaled. As the board members stood and exited, so did Celeste, her heels striking fast across the floor, not bothering to hide her fury. Marcus stayed still. Noah looked up at him. His voice was quiet. You didn't even yell. I didn't need to, Marcus said, and he meant it. The hallway outside the boardroom was lined with tension. No one spoke as the board members filed out one by one. Their faces gave nothing away, not anger, not sympathy, just the smooth, unreadable mask of institutional process. But Marcus knew better than most what silence could mean. In combat, it came right before the breach. In rooms like this, it came before judgment. Noah sat on the bench just outside the chamber, fidgeting with the frayed edge of his backpack strap. He hadn't said a word since the footage played. His fingers twitched as if they wanted to draw something, but there was no sketch pad, no pencils. Marcus stood a few feet away, watching the movement of the hallway. Teachers whispering near the copy room door, a janitor pushing a supply cart, trying not to look at him. Maya was off to the side, pacing slowly, eyes locked on her phone. Finally, the door opened again. Mrs. Haddix leaned out and motioned to them. We're ready. Marcus didn't flinch. Neither did Noah. They stepped back into the room, the air cooler now, as if the system had overcompensated for the heat of tension moments earlier. Celeste was already seated, arms folded tightly, lips pressed in a line that was less composed and more braced. The board chair remained standing. "This review has concluded," he said. Everyone sat. Noah Lane will not be transferred. The board recognizes that the incident in question was the result of targeted harassment. The footage entered today confirms that Noah was a victim, not an instigator. A small shift rippled through the room. Shoulders relaxed. Whispers started. But the chair wasn't done. "In addition," he continued, "we acknowledge that the administrative response, including the proposed erasure of security footage and the premature issuance of disciplinary action, was inappropriate and out of alignment with district policy." Now Celeste sat straighter, but her face didn't move. "We're recommending a formal audit of internal processes regarding disciplinary reporting and transparency." Marcus didn't smile. He just looked down once, briefly, at the gold pin still resting near his elbow. The board chair cleared his throat. "Mr. Lane, we understand your employment status remains under review by contract policy, but I believe the record now reflects your conduct accurately." Marcus stood, picked up the pin, and returned it to his jacket pocket. "I didn't ask for my job back." "No," the chair said. "You didn't." Outside, the sky had turned overcast. The clouds hung low, heavy with moisture, but not quite ready to rain. Marcus and Noah stepped into the lot, neither speaking right away. The tension hadn't broken, not fully. Some things didn't ease, just because words had been said. As they walked to the car, they passed a group of students heading to lunch. A few glanced up. One boy, a lanky 7th grader with a cracked phone case, nodded at Noah. Just a nod. Nothing more. Noah blinked, then looked down, hiding the faint pink in his cheeks. "You okay?" Marcus asked. "I think so." They drove in silence for a while. The streets blurred by. Familiar stop signs, bus stops, fences that needed paint. Marcus didn't turn the radio on. At a red light, Noah finally spoke. "You said you made things disappear." "I did." "Like, what?" Marcus thought for a moment. "Threats, explosives, hostage situations, sometimes lies." Noah nodded slowly. "Did you ever mess up?" "Yes," Marcus said. "A few times." "What happened?" "We adapted, improvised." Noah turned to look out the window again. "That's what you did today?" Marcus's hands tightened slightly on the wheel. "No. Today I didn't need to improvise. I just needed to stop pretending." Back home, the apartment felt lighter. Noah unpacked his backpack for the first time all week. His books came out one by one, the pencil pouch. His folder bent at the corners. He set everything in a neat row on the kitchen table, then turned to Marcus. "Can I go back Monday?" Marcus nodded. "They said you can return without restriction." Noah didn't smile. Not really. But something in his posture eased. "I want to draw something about the hearing." "Go ahead." Marcus walked to the sink, washed his hands slowly, letting the warm water soak through his calloused skin. As he reached for the towel, a knock came at the door. He dried off and opened it. It was Leo, the maintenance supervisor from the school. He held a paper envelope in one hand and a thermos in the other. "I'm not staying," Leo said quickly. "Just figured you might want this." He handed over the envelope. Inside was a copy of Marcus's old time card, with a new one clipped to it. "Board overruled the district," Leo said. "Told them your contract's safe. You don't gotta come back if you don't want to, but if you do, your shift's Monday morning." Marcus looked at the thermos. "And that?" "Hot coffee," Leo said. "Fresh, for once." He started to turn, then paused. "Just so you know, a couple of the kids were talking near the lockers after you left. They're calling you something." Marcus raised an eyebrow. Leo grinned. "The mop Ghost. Then he walked off down the hall. Marcus closed the door behind him. Noah was still at the table, sketching furiously. When he looked up, he smiled. Just a little. I think you scared them. I didn't want to scare them. I know, but maybe they needed it. Marcus didn't argue. He just sat down, leaned back, and let the silence settle. For the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like waiting for the next attack. It felt like rest. Celeste Braxton's office was quieter than usual. Not because it was empty. Her assistant still clicked away outside and 2 legal consultants were waiting in the lounge. But because she'd stopped speaking the moment the board's statement hit her inbox. The wording was measured, diplomatic, but the meaning was not. Her attempt to remove Noah Lane had failed. Publicly. And worse, she'd been named in the audit request. She closed the email and tapped her fingers against the desk, the rhythm sharp and uneven. Outside, the city buzzed with its usual rhythm. Traffic, conversations, life. But inside, the walls felt tighter than usual, the air a little heavier. The footage had been her miscalculation. She hadn't expected him to retrieve it. She hadn't expected him to have allies, and she certainly hadn't expected Marcus Lane, the janitor, the widower, the quiet man in faded boots, to become a symbol. That word had started surfacing in online threads. Symbol. It infuriated her. Symbols couldn't be negotiated with. At Central Unified, things moved quietly but decisively. Ms. Delaney returned to her classroom early Monday morning to find a note on her desk, handwritten in sharp, blocky lettering. Thanks for telling the truth. ML. There was no signature. There didn't need to be. Word had gotten around. Marcus would be back on the grounds by midweek. Not as a janitor anymore. His role would be Facilities and Safety Liaison, a new title created in response to recent disciplinary policy failures. Unofficially, everyone knew what it meant. The district had learned something it hadn't wanted to admit. Authority didn't always come from status. Sometimes it came from stillness, from skill, from someone who moved like he'd seen worse things than angry parents and school board politics. Marcus didn't gloat. He arrived before sunrise Wednesday, just as the cafeteria lights flickered on. He nodded to the cafeteria lead, who gave him a tight-lipped smile and a silent cup of coffee. He made his usual rounds, checking the boiler room, the janitorial storage, the hallway camera dome that had nearly been erased. It was still flickering at the edges. Still analog. He left it that way. Some things were worth keeping old school. By 7:15 a.m., students were arriving. He watched from the corner of the hallway as Noah walked in through the side entrance, alone. His steps were more confident now, shoulders square, head level. A few students nodded as he passed, not out of pity, not out of fear, just acknowledgement, recognition. At the end of the day, Marcus stood outside the front office waiting for Leo. The two hadn't spoken much since the cartridge handoff, but there was no tension, just unspoken understanding between men who'd seen too much to waste time on ceremony. Leo arrived carrying a clipboard and a replacement battery pack. Got the new cams for the West Wing, he said. Need help installing? Leo raised an eyebrow. You offering to crawl into the ceiling again? I've had worse assignments. They worked for 20 minutes without talking, just the sound of tools and screws and the occasional ceiling tile scraping loose. When they were done, Leo stood, brushed dust off his knees and said, Heard Celeste might be stepping down. Marcus didn't react. Voluntarily? Publicly, yes. Good. Leo nodded once. You planning to stay long? Until I'm no longer needed. You sure that's how that works? Marcus didn't answer. On Thursday, a new art piece appeared in the main hallway. It wasn't large, just a sketch, printed and laminated, hung beside the lockers near the center camera. It showed a boy, curled on the ground, arms over his head, shadows looming behind him. But in the next frame, the shadows were gone, and a figure stood in their place, mop handle in hand, back straight, eyes forward, no name, no caption, just initials in the bottom corner. NL students walked past it. Some paused, some didn't, but no one laughed. That evening, Marcus returned home to find Noah already at the kitchen table, working on another drawing. His face was more relaxed now, but his brow furrowed with concentration. "What are you working on?" Noah hesitated, then turned the page toward his father. It was a portrait, rough, unpolished, but unmistakably him. Marcus, standing in the hallway, not in uniform, not holding anything, just there, visible, seen. "I think I want to draw comics," Noah said. "Not superheroes, just people who do things." Marcus studied the drawing. "You already are." Later that night, as the apartment settled into quiet, Marcus opened the firebox beneath the bed. The backup footage was still there. So were the letters, the credentials, the folder from Maya, now sealed again. He didn't remove anything, but he did place one new item inside, the board's official ruling, folded neatly in thirds, signed by every member, including Celeste, who'd submitted her signature the morning she formally resigned. He shut the box and locked it, then sat back in his chair and let the quiet stretch long. Outside, the city moved on, but in one apartment, in one corner of a school district that had nearly buried the truth, a man once trained to make things disappear had made one thing very clear. He was done hiding. Celeste Braxton's resignation landed in inboxes on a Friday morning. The message was brief. No apology, no admission, just a single paragraph wrapped in polished language. Effective immediately, I am stepping down to prioritize my family and professional commitments elsewhere. It has been an honor serving this district. No fanfare, no press conference, no farewell. But no one missed what it meant. The power she'd wielded, the smug certainty, the curated reputation, the invisible pressure she could apply behind closed doors, was gone. And everyone in the district knew why. The footage had done damage. But the silence afterward had done more. No one defended her, not publicly, not in whispers, because no one wanted to be on the wrong side of a story that had spread far beyond the school board walls. At Central Unified, things continued quietly, but small shifts had taken root. The front office stopped treating parents like interruptions. Teachers began asking students about things beyond grades. A mural commission that had been stalled for months was suddenly approved by the new interim chair, this time chosen by vote, not legacy. And the maintenance crew? They stopped referring to Marcus as the janitor. They started calling him by name. One afternoon, a student tripped in the lunchroom. Nothing dramatic, just a spilled tray and a loud crash of metal against tile. A few kids laughed. One phone came out. But before it could turn cruel, Marcus crossed the room, knelt beside the boy, and helped him gather the scattered carton and bruised pride. No lecture, no scolding, just presence. The boy stood slowly, face red, eyes low. Marcus looked him in the eye. "Still standing," he said quietly. "That's the part that counts." The laughter stopped. The phone lowered. Noah had stopped asking if he was safe. He no longer flinched when students passed too close in the hallway. He no longer avoided the main entrance. His stutter hadn't disappeared. Marcus didn't expect it to. But the way Noah carried himself had changed. There was steadiness now. One afternoon, Noah stayed after class to help Ms. Delaney organize paint jars. When she thanked him, he shrugged and said, "Dad says people who see messes and don't fix them become the mess." She wrote it down after he left. Leo found Marcus in the boiler room a few days later, cleaning out a rusted valve no one had touched in months. "You're not paid for that." I wasn't paid for a lot of things I did, Marcus said. Leo grunted. Still doing more than you have to. That's the job. Leo leaned against the doorway. You ever miss it? Marcus didn't look up. Which part? The missions, the adrenaline, the purpose. He paused before answering. Sometimes. Leo nodded slowly. But you stayed here. I chose Noah. That's not the same as staying. Marcus wiped his hands and finally met his eyes. I know. That weekend, Marcus took Noah to the river bench again. The names were still etched into the concrete, but someone had cleaned the moss off the base. A small candle in a metal tin flickered near one corner, wind-flicked, but steady. Noah sat first. You think the other people who came back ever talk about it? Not out loud, Marcus said, but they remember. Noah stared at the candle. Did it help? Telling me? Marcus thought for a moment. Yeah, I think it did. They sat in silence. The wind rolled gently over the water. Cars passed on the highway above, too distant to intrude. Noah leaned back. People don't look at me the same anymore. No. Is that bad? It means they're starting to see you for who you are, not who they assumed. I don't know if I like it. You don't have to like it, you just have to be ready. Noah didn't reply, but he didn't argue either. That night, Marcus found a letter in the mailbox. No stamp, no return address, just his name written in ballpoint pen. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed. Mr. Lane, you don't know me, but I watched the hearing. My daughter was one of the students who used to laugh. She doesn't anymore. She told me your son drew a picture of her last week and gave it to her after class. He didn't say anything, just handed it to her. I think that taught her more than detention ever could. Thank you. There was no signature. Marcus folded the letter and slipped it into the firebox, with the others. He didn't need to know who sent it. He only needed to know it had been written. As the school week ended, Maya stopped by the building unannounced. She leaned against the front desk while Marcus adjusted the hallway monitor mount. Thought you might like to know, she said. The audit's moving forward, quietly, but thoroughly. They're cleaning house, bit by bit. Your footage gave them cover to dig deeper. Turns out, Celeste had more skeletons than just hallway politics. Marcus tightened the bracket, then stepped down from the ladder. What happens next? Maya smirked. That's the fun part. You don't need to do anything. He raised an eyebrow. You already won. Marcus didn't feel like he'd won. He didn't feel triumphant or vindicated or heroic. He felt still. Not numb. Just finally, for the first time in years, still. The kind of quiet that came after a long storm. And in that stillness, something subtle had taken root. Not revenge, not power, but presence. And that, more than anything else, was what they hadn't expected. The invitation came in a sealed envelope, crisp, formal, and oddly elegant for a public school function. Noah opened it at the kitchen table, carefully slicing along the edge with the butter knife Marcus had just used on toast. Inside was a single cardstock print, fall showcase, student art exhibition location. Central Unified Gymnasium, date Thursday, 6:30 p.m., featured student, Noah Lane. Noah stared at the card for a long time. He didn't say anything. Marcus poured coffee in silence, watching the way his son's hand hovered over the paper. When he finally looked up, his voice was small. I didn't think they'd let me in. You earned it, Marcus said. Twice over. Noah looked back down, then slid the card into his binder without another word. But his posture told Marcus everything he needed to know. He was going. The gymnasium was warmer than usual on Thursday night, lit with soft amber bulbs strung along the walls, casting a golden haze over the folding chairs and plywood display boards. Students' work filled every surface, acrylic bursts of color, charcoal sketches, mosaics built from torn paper and magazine cutouts. Marcus stood just inside the doors, holding a folded chair under one arm and a thermos in the other. He didn't rush. He took in the room like a battlefield, mapping exits, measuring space, noting every face that turned toward him with curiosity and caution. Then he saw it. Noah's section. It wasn't flashy, no bold titles, no dramatic color, just 6 black and white illustrations arranged in a vertical column. The first showed a hallway, a locker, a boy standing alone. The second showed shadows approaching. The third, a hand extended not in violence, but in protection. The fourth was the moment of stillness, when the hallway froze. The fifth was a courtroom, sketched only in lines and empty space. And the sixth? It was Marcus, not drawn in full detail, but unmistakably him, holding a mop. Not as a weapon, not broken, just held like a walking stick, his other hand resting lightly on a boy's shoulder. Below the series was a single line, printed in Noah's careful handwriting. Sometimes the quiet ones already won. Marcus didn't realize he was holding his breath until someone stepped beside him. It was Ms. Delaney. He didn't want to include the last piece, she said softly. Said it felt too personal? He's right. But I told him the story wasn't finished without it. Marcus looked down. No, it wasn't. As more families poured in, a few faces turned their way. Not everyone smiled, not everyone spoke, but no one looked away. Caleb Braxton walked past with his father in tow. The boy didn't meet Marcus's eyes, but his steps slowed near Noah's display, just enough to take it in, just enough to pause. Then he moved on. Later that evening, the microphone squealed softly as the interim principal adjusted it at the front of the gym. Tonight, we're proud to feature the work of students who have shown courage, growth, and depth, not just in their art, but in the way they carry themselves through challenge. He gestured to the back wall. Noah Lane, would you please stand? Gasps rippled across the room, not cruel, but surprised. Noah froze. Marcus placed a hand on his shoulder. Noah stood. Applause began, tentative at first, then stronger, then sustained. He didn't bow, didn't wave, he just stood, still, steady, present. They walked home under a sky thick with stars. Noah held the folder of his prints tucked beneath one arm, the corners curling in the breeze. You think they meant it? He asked. Marcus didn't ask who they were, the clappers, the teachers, the district, the students. He just answered honestly. Some did. Noah nodded. Some's enough. They turned the corner toward their building, the porch light flickering faintly overhead. Marcus paused before opening the door. You did good, Key, he said. Not just with the art. Noah looked up. You taught me how. Marcus shook his head. You figured it out. Inside, the apartment was warm, quiet, and ordinary. Marcus took off his boots and set them by the door. Noah placed the folder on the table, then disappeared into his room. Marcus poured one last cup of coffee and sat by the window, the hum of the street rising like a lullaby. Somewhere below, a dog barked, a car started. Life moved on. But inside, it was still. The kind of stillness you earn, not with medals, not with retaliation, but with proof. That dignity, once defended, doesn't need to be shouted. It stands. Thank you for staying with us through this story. Subscribe and don't miss our next one. Beat me at chess and I'll respect you, CEO sneered. Seconds later, his king fell. Trust me, you'll feel it. And tell me in the comments, what injustice should we tackle next?